Blue cloth covers the ground from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey. The air outside is cold and snowy. It is January 15th, 1559, and the woman about to walk on this cloth has been declared a bastard by 2 acts of Parliament. The Archbishop of Canterbury has been dead for 2 months, and not a single senior bishop in England will put a crown on her head. She gets crowned anyway, not by a high-ranking churchman, by Owen Oglethorpe, the Bishop of Carlisle, a former Vice-Chancellor of Oxford, who is about 57 years old and who, 3 weeks earlier, infuriated Elizabeth on Christmas Day by disobeying her direct order during Mass. She told him not to raise the bread at communion. He did it anyway. She walked out. And now he is the only bishop in England willing to crown her. You are looking at the start of the most celebrated reign in English history, and it begins with a woman who cannot find a churchman she trusts to do the job. On November 17th, 1558, around 6 in the morning, Mary I dies at St. James's Palace. A priest is saying Mass in her chamber as she goes. 12 hours later, across the river at Lambeth Palace, her cousin Cardinal Reginald Pole dies of the same flu epidemic sweeping through England. Pole is the Archbishop of Canterbury. His job is to crown the next monarch. He is gone. Same day as the Queen. Eamon Duffy documented the timing in History Today, 2009. The Protestant chronicler Raphael Holinshed, writing in 1577, recorded both deaths in his chronicles. You know the golden version. Trumpets, glory, a beloved young queen. Here on this channel, we go behind the painting. And the version behind the painting looks nothing like the one in it. If this already changed what you thought you knew, leave a like. Tell me in the comments which part hit you. Every subscription helps us pull one more story out of the frame. Now let me show you the rest. Elizabeth is 25 and red-haired. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, was beheaded at the Tower of London when Elizabeth was 2 years old. 2 acts of Parliament declared her a bastard. A third restored her place in the line of succession, but never restored her legitimacy. 3 days before the coronation, she moves into the Tower to prepare. Tradition. But here is the problem. 5 years earlier, she was a prisoner in this same tower, locked up by her own sister on suspicion of treason. David Starkey records in Elizabeth, Apprenticeship 2000, that as she left the tower for her coronation procession, she stopped and prayed aloud, thanking God for her deliverance, comparing herself to Daniel in the lion's den. You can call that performance. But the people she watched walk through those gates and never come back were real. Her mother was one of them. Her advisor Nicholas Bacon tells her one thing: do not try to fix the laws that call you a bastard. Just get crowned. The crown once worn, Bacon says, takes away all defects, so the coronation does not celebrate her right to rule. It manufactures it. And this is where the spiral begins. The faster she needs this ceremony, the more she has to compromise. And every compromise chips at the very thing she is trying to build. The Archbishop of Canterbury is dead. Next in line is Nicholas Heath, Archbishop of York. He will attend as a guest. He will not officiate. The Bishop of London, Edmund Bonner, burned Protestants under Mary. Elizabeth will not have him near. The Bishop of Winchester is under house arrest. The Bishop of Chichester died in a prison cell on December 28th. There is no one left. Wait. It gets worse. William Hogarth documented this collapse in the Journal of Ecclesiastical History, 1968. Every senior bishop in England is either dead, locked up, or refusing. Here is the part they never paint. The church, whose entire purpose is to say God approves of this ruler, looks at Elizabeth and says no. Here is what stays with me long after the research ends. The date is not picked by the church. Previous coronations fell on Christian holy days. January 15th is chosen by John Dee, a mathematician who will spend years of his life trying to talk to angels through seances. Elizabeth's friend Robert Dudley tells her to consult Dee for the best alignment of planets. Dee maps the sky and picks noon on January 15th. A ceremony that is supposed to speak for God is scheduled by a man who speaks to angels. Now the clothes. And no one talks about this. Elizabeth spends £16,000 on the coronation. But costume historian Janet Arnold established that she does not commission new robes. She alters her dead sister's wardrobe, Mary's coronation mantle, Mary's crimson velvet parliament robes, the bodice taken in to fit. Within 4 months, she passes the laws that undo everything Mary built. If you are still here, you already know. The golden version was never the real one. An occultist picks the date. The only bishop willing already defied her 3 weeks earlier. The dead queen's clothes dress the living one. The day before the coronation, Elizabeth rides from the tower in a gold-covered litter carried by 2 mules through cold January air, past 5 pageants on wooden stages. Foreign merchants, who funded the most lavish spectacles at Mary's coronation, are deliberately excluded. A man named Richard Mulcaster walks alongside, writing it all down. His pamphlet, printed 8 days later, describes a city overcome with love. For centuries, historians used it as evidence. Alice Hunt proved in The Drama of Coronation, Cambridge University Press, 2008, that the Revels Office and the Royal Wardrobe planned every spectacle. Mulcaster was not recording what happened. He was writing what the government needed you to believe happened. At Cheapside, a figure representing truth hands Elizabeth an English Bible. 2 Latin words on the cover. Verbum veritatis, the word of truth. Mulcaster's own pamphlet records what she did. She kissed it, held it up in both her hands, and laid it on her breast. Next morning, Westminster Hall, hung with Henry VIII's own tapestries. Elizabeth walks on the blue cloth toward the Abbey. Behind her, the crowd tears the fabric to pieces with bare hands and knives. At the coronation of Elizabeth of York in 1487, this same tradition killed people. The painting in the National Portrait Gallery shows you gold, an orb, a scepter. Everything I have told you is what they painted over. Inside the Abbey, Oglethorpe rubs the holy oil into Elizabeth's skin. She is crowned 3 times, once with the crown of St. Edward, once with the imperial state crown, and once with a 3rd, lighter crown. Mary I had refused to use this oil at her own coronation in 1553, believing it was corrupted by Protestant hands. She sent secretly to Belgium for fresh oil. Elizabeth uses whatever is left. Behind a curtained area near the altar, she reportedly tells her maids the oil is greasy and foul-smelling. Alice Hunt referenced this in her 2023 Gresham College lecture on British coronations. And here is what no one tells you. So what does the new Queen of England do at the holiest point of her own coronation? She steps behind the curtain and disappears. 3 surviving eyewitness accounts describe what happened next. All 3 contradict each other. David Starkey argues the bishop raised the bread. John Guy and Lisa Hilton argue the chaplain George Carew performed a different version of the service entirely. 500 years. Historians are still arguing. And it works. All of it. Elizabeth comes out dressed in gold from her shoes to her shoulders. The lords kneel and kiss her cheek. An Italian envoy, recorded by A.L. Rouse in History Today, 1953, compares the river pageant to the ceremony of the Venetian doges. Within months, Parliament makes Elizabeth supreme head of the English Church. And Oglethorpe, the only man in England willing to place that crown on her head. stripped of his office by June, under house arrest in London by autumn, dead by December. He did not survive the year. Henry VIII broke with Rome so he could have a son to sit on this throne. His son ruled 6 years. His Catholic daughter ruled 5. The daughter he declared a bastard ruled 44. Every golden story you have ever been told about a throne, a crown, a great leader looked like this behind the painting, stitched together, improvised, held up by someone who got destroyed for it. Oglethorpe put the crown on her head and did not live to see what she did with it. That is the cost of the golden version. Someone always pays for it, and the painting never shows you who. The crown does not prove you belong. It proves everyone agreed to stop asking. Blue cloth covers the ground from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey. By the end of the day, there is nothing left of it. There never is.